Not mine own fears, nor the prophetic soul of the wide world dreaming on things to come, can yet the lease of my true love control, supposed as forfeit to a confined doom. The mortal moon hath her eclipse endured, and the sad augurs mock their own presage. Uncertainties now crown themselves assured, and peace proclaims olives of endless age. Now with the drops of this most balmy time, my love looks fresh, and death to me subscribes. Since spite of him I'll live in this poor rhyme, while he insults our dull and speechless tribes. And thou in this shalt find thy monument, when tyrants' crests and tombs of brass are spent. Okay, hey guys, I'm Taylor, and I hope you guys liked my little video clip. I did Sonnet 107 by Shakespeare. Before I do the analysis, I'm just gonna go through, I guess, my creative inspiration on my video clip. It actually all worked together really randomly and very well. My initial inspiration was to go outside and try and get a video of the full moon, but that didn't happen. So I improvised, and I really wanted to depict the imagery within the poem that talks specifically about time and change, fleeting time and immortality, and how Shakespeare pretty much beats death. He defeats death by living vicariously through his work. And so my creative inspiration, I did the time lapse for the theme of time because I wanted to depict how time moves quickly, which is kind of Shakespeare's whole thing. And so he kind of uses his work to defeat that. And so I thought time lapse was pretty cool. And then I also used the song Time by Hans Zimmer, and he's the guy who, I don't know if you recognize the song, but it's from Inception, which also kind of has something to do with defeating this whole death and time thing and immortality. So that worked out really well. And then obviously I did the picture of the eclipse in the beginning to talk about the second half of the first octave. And it says, the mortal moon hath her eclipse endured. So yeah, the eclipse. Okay, so the eclipse is Shakespeare's way of using imagery and metaphor to pretty much depict two different things. The first one, which is most obvious, it's at the bottom of the page 1211, and it talks about the death of Queen Elizabeth, so the end of the Elizabethan era. And I believe that kind of signifies the Dark Ages, and that's what the whole eclipse is about, because when an eclipse happens, it casts a shadow over the world. And so he was essentially walking in the shadows of Earth during the Elizabethan era. But once King James I comes in and takes over after Queen Elizabeth dies, he restores peace to England, which is pretty much what the poem is talking about. It's talking about how Shakespeare is now living in kind of a new age, in a new world where his work is appreciated, and all those uncertainties from the past no longer apply. In fact, they are what built his fame and allow him immortality. Okay, and the second way Shakespeare uses imagery and metaphor through the moon and the eclipse cycle is, well, this may be a little far-fetched, but I got a feeling towards the end that the poem kind of transformed into a more personal piece in relation to his relationship with his work. And so I believe that the eclipse may also signify the past. So it's kind of the poem's kind of a before and after kind of thing. And so the eclipse essentially depicts this time when Shakespeare lived in all these anxieties and uncertainties and the darkness of the world, which didn't allow him to thrive in his talent. And so by this new, I guess, balmy time of King James, he is allowed to live the life that he always wanted to live in the first place. Okay, so some of the common themes we see in Sonnet 107 are immortality, time, and change. and how he kind of defeats the nature of the world in a sense. So if we break it down piece by piece, we see that the poem is broken into two parts, an octave and a sestet. It's a 14-line poem, and the first 8 lines would be the octave. And this, the octave kind of highlights a problem from the past that has now been defeated through the imagery of his beloved or true love. But I kind of got a sense that his true love may be in reference to his relationship with his work rather than a physical human being. As we see in line 1 through 4, Shakespeare uses the phrase, the prophetic soul of the wide world dreaming on things to come. And he uses this to depict this kind of, this term called anima mundi, and it literally means a world soul. And what he's trying to say here is how he sort of breathes life into all creation, and that creation would be his beloved or his work. And so that kind of sets the mood of the poem, and kind of gives the poet the power. Okay, and the second half, as we said, the mortal moon, the eclipse kind of depict two different things. The end of the Elizabethan era, which was during the Dark Ages, or the end of the Dark Ages, along with this idea of Shakespeare escaping the darkness of his world, I guess, and the uncertainties that followed him around as a writer. And so it goes on to say, peace proclaims olives of endless age. And again, this is in reference to his work and how the peace he's found within his work has now allowed him to, again, live through his poetry. And that essentially provides him with this immortality or endless age. And so that's pretty much, that's where the octave ends and the sestet begins. And it gives off this more, I would say, romantic tone. It talks really about how his love has been renewed and is fresh, and how that now essentially defeats death. And it says, and death to me subscribe. So he is now in power over the Grim Reaper, and he's going to, as you see on line 7, I'll live in this poor rhyme. He's straight up saying that he will live vicariously and forever throughout history through this poem or sonnet, along with everything else that he's ever created. Okay, I also, I chose Sonnet 107 because I'm a huge Shakespeare nerd, for one, and I went back and forth between 107 and 138, but I loved the eclipse part of 107. I just liked how it kind of talked about the poet, or Shakespeare, I guess, experiencing this kind of dark phase or cycle in his life. And I think that just as a writer, I guess, I can relate to that. Because sometimes when you're in an eclipse, I guess, you come up with some really great work. And so I think that the eclipse does a really good job of portraying that time in someone's life as compared to the fame of it. And that is all. So, sorry it's long, and I will face you people on Tuesday.